All right, let's try it again. Let's try it again. I don't know what the deal was, but we
And we
back.
back.
Let's see if it did anything different this time. Normally it shows out a lot more than that, but for whatever reason it wasn't. But I was reluctant to even end it, but it is what it is.
Okay.
So
Are you live on your page?
yeah, I didn't get any notification yet, but we'll see. It should. It says I am. Although it was saying I was before too. So as y'all come in, do me a favor, hit that like button, share the video, and let's get a good conversation going. See who is that so far. I'm not sure who that is so far, but all right. A little bit of a slow start to an otherwise wonderful conversation. Man, you were starting to go right into the wisdom of parenting and parenting styles. But before you roll into that, I'd like to know a little bit about your influences. Like, who were the biggest influences on your parenting styles? Was it like your own parents, grandparents? Like, where'd you get that from?
I, believe it or not, I knew you were going to ask that question, and so it wasn't my parents.
Okay.
It was my grandparents. And what I realized is that my grandparents had my respect, they had my love, my adoration, but they never hit me. And I was, wondering what was the difference as I grew up, because and we've probably had this discussion before. The people who may be joining us is I didn't whip my kids, and I was reminded that was going to be or chastised me, that was going to be a death sentence for him if I didn't do it. The police was going to do it and things of that nature. But I happened to grow up with my grandmother, who lived across the street from my parents. And so my parents were young and working and doing what young parents do. And so my grandma was almost around. And thinking back, she was probably only 40 years old. You know what I'm saying? Or
Right,
in her
right.
40s. Much younger than I am now, And I felt like, when looking back, the grandparents, I call it the range. If you tell your grandma, your grandfather, hey baby, I was just elected student body president. Oh, that's good, baby. Grandma happy for you. Hey, grandma, I just been convicted of grand larceny. I'm going to jail for 5 years. Grandma love you. Grandma gonna pray for you.
Yep.
And so they have a range that they keep in. Whereas I think a lot of times parents, they praise their kids too high, and then when they do something bad, they come on down too hard. And so now kids are just kind of giving them what they think will make the parents happy, rather than being able to walk up to them and talk to them about the whole thing. That was my first influence, was my grandparents. My second influence was a guy named Bob Kersey. You may have heard of Bob Kersey. He's Jackie Jordan Kersey's husband, and he's my cousin. And he was the one who always gave me encouraging words. He spoke life to me, whereas a lot of times the parents and the aunts and uncles are always coming down on us, shooting the dozens and all that. He always spoke big words to me. I was an asthmatic, and he was telling me I was going to beat asthma. And he used to live with us when I was a kid. So I had this guy who went on to become the all-time leader in Olympic track medals, slept in the bed above me. And he developed me, gave me discipline and structure, guidance, accountability, but he never did hit me. And that stuck with me. And then the last one would have to be a coach. I forgot it, Coach Marable, when I was coaching football. And what he taught me is how to, like, if a kid fumbled in practice, you didn't make him run laps or climb stairs. You did something that he would do in the game. You want to reinforce the behavior you wanted to see. So he would just make him carry the ball for the rest of practice. And so that taught me that you have to kind of develop systems and teach people what the consequences are, good and bad, rather than just coming down with unpredictable things. That
Right.
makes sense?
Yeah.
And I remember one time he gave a speech when the kids didn't want to run. It was August. It was hot. It was, 100 degrees out here, and they didn't want to run laps or conditioning. And he pulled them together and said, "Hey, remember how it felt when we lost in the playoffs because we were tired in the fourth quarter? Like, yeah, how'd that feel? Oh, it was horrible. Well, this is where you pay for it. You know what I'm saying? So this running that we're doing now is what's gonna help us get where we're going. And we must have a technical issue because this is Gabe. So take me off the screen for a second. Let me see what Gabe is going feedback he gonna give me.
Okay. Yeah, we've been having some technical difficulties this evening, but we're working through it. We're working through it. What I'm probably going to end up having to do is just piece the video together and then just upload it as one whole clip. But it's all good, and it's unfortunate because I've been looking forward to this interview. This brother's a wealth of wisdom, and man, like I said, I couldn't wait to share this with y'all. But do me a favor for the few of you who are in here, do me a favor and hit that like button and share this video. OG, you ready to come back in or what? All right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tell Gabe I don't have it. He was just trying. He's looking for it.
Okay. Yeah, man, it's crazy the way it's going. Let me
But we're gonna
see.
keep going. If we don't do it this time, we're gonna go again. Look, it can't stop us. And that's the when life throw you a curveball, man, you just make the adjustments.
That's it, man. That's it. Let me
I'm
see.
gonna tell them look on your Facebook.
Yeah, I'm actually going in to redo it right now myself. So
Yeah.
let me see. I can share it right now. Let me see. Tell him to go to my page. Matter of fact, I'm gonna send it to him. I'm gonna put it back in the group. There we go. Share to the group. There we go.
All right.
All
You
right.
send it to the husband group.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Inbox it to him too, if you can.
All right, cool. Let's see. Let me send that to Gabe. Man, I hate that. Man, like I was just telling them while you was off. I don't know if you can hear me. I've been looking forward to getting you on here for a while, and it's unfortunate that we having a few difficulties. But like you said, if nothing else,
That's
we
all
may
right.
just have to run it back, and that'll be what it'll be.
I see it now, so we good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I just sent it to Gabe.
Yeah.
So, all right, there we go. Yeah. So where were we, man? Where did we leave off?
We're just talking about parenting style, and I'm glad you asked because it's evolved, right? The first iteration was okay. I'm gonna have a violence-free family. Let's see what that looks like. And in that, you have to make the adjustments that of what you were brought up on, what you knew and what you understand. So you have to be willing to learn something new, right? And now that they're
Yep.
all grown, that's a whole nother move. Like, of course, I don't whoop them. They're all 34, 27, 23, so
Right.
that's not a thing. But when I first got online, it was about the part about what discipline. All right, Gabe is here.
Yep.
And so I have a lot of fathers reach out and ask me for advice, and I'm very careful about giving advice because I'm in a different stage of life. And like, okay, let's talk about, oh man, get them kids off the iPad. You have someone my age talking about the tech and all that. Well, what I have to realize and what they have to realize is that iPads are introduced when, one of my kids was in college, one was in high school, and one was in junior high. So I didn't have the same set of circumstances that I was dealing with. And so I have to apply it to what I did have. So back when the Columbine killings, actually, no, I did that. But remember when LeBron went into the finals the first time against the Spurs? So what year was that? Maybe 2007.
Yep.
Right after the playoffs, I cut cable off because I wanted to spend more time with the family. Cut cable off. I cut cable off, and no TVs in the rooms.
Mm.
And so it forced us to play board games and talk to each other, listen to the radio, listen to radio programs, play Connect Four, draw. But that wouldn't work today, and it didn't work once they got into high school because then we had computers. Then I said, okay, no computers in the rooms. Then the smartphones became computers, and so now none of my techniques, as it relates to what it was on TV, worked. But I did turn the screen off. So maybe you say, okay, we're gonna turn screens off at this time, and we're gonna eat together as a family. That's another thing we did. We ate together as many
Yep.
nights as possible, but always on Sunday if we were all in town. And so it was about spending more time because there's so many things that allow you to spend less time at this point. I hope I'm not rambling.
No, you good. You good.
Yeah. And so now, as a 54-year-old man, I talk to younger fathers like Gabe. Me and Gabe had some discussions when we first met. And let me tell you about Gabe and Cliff and a couple other friends that I make friends with. I make a lot of friends in the husband group that we met in because we are allowed to disagree and we're allowed to butt heads and we're allowed to challenge each other. I was challenged by Marquise Golston. You were challenged by Cliff. And through that conflict, I think any strong relationship has to be able to survive conflict. And so there are other groups I'm in who don't allow any conflict, right? And I believe that friendships are grown and tested through conflict. And ours is just barbershop conflict. It's not anything where we're trying to fly to a city and shoot nobody. But it's like we're trying to get our point across. And then what happens is we start to see it from the other person's perspective, or maybe their lived experiences, or something of that mix. And I think that's healthy. Where at other groups, as soon as we start disagreeing, they blocking everybody. They shutting down the thread. And that to me is very damaging. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of young men don't know how to resolve conflict, because they don't have any opportunities to. You can't slap box, no horse plan, you can't disagree. And so now when you do have a disagreement, you go right to, you don't know how to fight. The reason you don't know how to fight, my little brother. Can you hear me there? I'm talking about you. My little brother's over there. And I used to beat the brakes off of him when we were young, right? Well, a funny thing happened when we became teenagers. He outgrew me. He went to I stayed at 5'9". He went up to 6'1". He was stronger and faster and younger. And so he came back for his get back. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So once I figured I couldn't just bully him around, I had to learn how to deal with him a different way, you know? But he learned how to fight, and he could fight by getting, wrestled around me. And for me, it was my big cousin Terry, you know? And so when I went out to school and somebody tried to bully me, I was like, man, this is nothing. Right. And so the horseplay and the slap boxing and the verbal jousting that we do at the barbershop there's really not a lot of places we can do it.
Yep. I agree. And to that point, it's the same thing, same dynamic. I mean, I was the older brother, and so I used to give my little brother the business, 3 years younger than me. But I had 2 older cousins, and I couldn't. They worked me. So by the time like you said, by the time you get to school and you're wrestling with your peers, they really can't touch you.
Right.
Especially if they don't have any older brothers. But
especially if your big cousins went to school with you, because they would trash you, but let somebody else mess with you.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It was a wrap. And Gabe said he appreciates you because the challenge. Like, yes, we have to challenge each other, because one of my favorite sayings is who holds men accountable. Right. And I remember the first time Marquise Golston, who I have an immense amount of respect for, challenged me. He challenged me to go live, and I tried to wait for him to wake up because he's on the West Coast, and I went live the next day, and he totally got where I was coming from in that Facebook post that I made. And I was just talking about how we don't do things in order. We have 10 baby showers and 1 bridal shower, and and now we want to be celebrated for graduating with 3 kids. Right? When what we should have did was went to school, you know what I'm saying? Found a career, met somebody along the way, figure out this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, and then had children. But what we do is the exact opposite. We have children, then we try to meet somebody else, right? Then we struggle and try to find a career. And then once we realize that we don't have the skill, now we want to go get our education or our trade or our vocation. And then when that person does make it, we want to talk about, won't he do it? And God made way out of no way. Well, you sat here and you put all these obstacles in your way. You put all these hurdles in your way. And then you want to be celebrated for jumping your own mishaps. And I get it. I ain't tripping. But I am saying, boy, if you just do it the way that is laid out, it kind of works.
This is one of the conversations I find myself in a lot, where we talk about just having strong cultural values and strong cultural practices and strong race esteem. Like and right now, man, I think we're lagging when it comes to those different things, and so we oftentimes, like you said, we do things way out of order. And there's a quote by Dr. Kamal Kambon. He says, "Black people are very serious about not being very serious.
Mm.
Meanwhile, the rest of the world is very serious about playing hardball against us."
Yeah, we on the video dancing. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? We showing them little. Hey, what's up, nephew? We happy when somebody could do a good dance move. You know what I'm saying? And look, to be completely transparent, honest, and open, I was a teenage father, and sometimes I forget because it's so long ago, and it's not even part of my testimony. Um, I was a teenage father, and I call those 10 years. It takes 10 years to recover from that kind of a thing. By 30, I was married and had two more kids, and Air Force career, and as such. But when I tell my sons, like, listen, man, let me tell you what I was going through as a 19-year-old father, living at home with my parents, catching the bus to see my daughter. He was looking at me like, you were doing what? Like, yes, you don't
yeah,
want to do it. You know what I'm saying?
it's not the news, man.
It's
You
not
you
the
talk
move.
you you talk a little bit about parenting styles, and so I had to look into it a little bit. You have your different. I don't know how formal you are as far as describing those things, but you got your permissive, your authoritative,
Mhm.
neglectful, and your authoritarian. Um, so just kind of touch on that a little bit as far as what you mean when you talk about the different parenting styles,
I
and let's
looked at that chart and I forgot which one I was, but let me explain the one I was.
yeah.
I realized that kids are only kids for a season, right? And I felt like I was not raising children; I was raising functional adults. And
Hmm.
so, and when you're raising somebody who has their own life, who doesn't belong to you, is you have to give them some say so in their life, and it helps with them with what I call design uh, choice architecture, right? And so you got to teach them how to make choices at the level where they're at, so they can make choices, live with those choices, or fail with those choices. And the example I use is like bowling. When you first start bowling, you put those little gutter rings down
Right.
so they can have some success, right? And it's not, it's not. It gives them some predictability of success, and then as they get better, you pull them up, or a training wheel. You put the training wheel on, right? If you just put them on a bike and then they fall over, they're gonna think, man, that bike stuff don't work. You know what I'm saying? You give them
Right.
some
Right.
training wheels, you pull one up, then you pull the other one up, and then they ride till they fall until they figure it out. And so for me, man, it was about uh raising, because like I think you really have about 6 year window that you can really make effect with it. At first, the first 6 years, that's all you, from 6 to 12. But after 12, they are leaning towards adulthood or leaning towards getting out of here, you know. And so my style was more about teaching them how to make good choices, teaching them how to look at a situation, or saying, okay, what made you look at this and think it was okay? Because a lot of parents look at the behavior. I look at the belief, because your belief drives the behavior. What you believe, I can tell what you believe in by how you behave, right? Over time. And so I tried to address the belief of why something was going a particular way, and then either kill it or support that belief.
Yep.
Um, and that's just the way that's the way I looked at it.
So now I love that, man. Because there's a there. She's the daughter of a Veronica Conway. You familiar with
Hmm.
her? Daughter of the
Hmm.
Black Panther. I mean, I forget which one it was, but anyway, she said that one of the greatest predictors of human behavior is the identity belief.
Mm,
Yeah, so it's self-explanatory, right? With people, based on who you think you are or what
right.
you believe you are, you behave accordingly. Um, you talk about these different parenting styles. What do you do when there's a conflict in parenting styles? Because this causes a lot of problems in marriages and relationships. One parent wants to spank the children, the other one is hands off. How do you what do you think about resolving that issue, that conflict between the parents?
That was probably the biggest struggle. And so, my wife is a military background. She's a traditional Christian, great woman, and she brought the balance and instilled things that I didn't have, like empathy and compassion. I was more the confidence, which a lot of people look like arrogance when I was younger. And so you just have to walk through those and talk through those things because, you know, give you an example. When we got married, you know, I think I was just thinking about this on the way up here. You know, the what they say, leave and cleave, right? Leave your parents and do this thing. And so we both had households that were ran primarily by our mothers, and we knew we didn't want that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that put us on the same page. It didn't always materialize because you get used to certain things, but we always tried to remind each other what we wanted. And so we had a vision for what we wanted, but we just had different ways of going about it. Um, and that was hard, man. It was I can't act like it wasn't. Um, but I will say is that we had in mind, but we didn't kind of agree the whole way on how to get there. But once we sat down and talked about it, we figured it out. Now, okay, so a lot of parents say you don't want to argue in front of your kids and don't go to bed on an argument, right?
Right.
Um, and I was talking to my cousin's wife, my wife and my cousin's wife were doing a podcast, and she said she had never seen her parents argue. So when her husband raised his voice, she didn't know how to deal with that parental conflict. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
And so kids aren't dumb. They know when y'all ain't getting along. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we're so upset with each other that we may need to talk in the morning. Like we may need to let that sun go down on this one, because
Right.
I'm gonna say something that I can't take back, like bow and arrow, like arrows and words you can't take them back. And I learned early on that nothing hurts more than a word. A whooping go, the pain will go away. I got bit in the face by a dog. I can't recreate that pain in my mind, but there's some things that were said to me along the way that left a mark and that leave a mark to this day.
Yeah.
Um, and so um, the parenting part, if I had to do all over again, I'd spend more time uh, understanding parenting ideals because my wife is a little bit older than me and she's a baby boomer and I'm the generation right below that. So we already have, as a group, we have just different thoughts of uh, uh, what should be and what shouldn't be. So yeah,
Yeah.
man, that was rough. And I say most of the conflict has been uh, that not knowing which way we're going to go. So what did Gabe say? Me and my wife have
He
different
said
parenting
my
styles, but
wife
I've
and
been
I have different. Yeah, my wife and I have different parenting styles, but I've been going with her method, and that created a bad situation. And that, that's kind of like what you were just talking about, just being able to talk about those differences. And I think the word is compromise, finding a healthy
yeah,
compromise. And I
yeah,
think a lot of times, man, people misunderstand what compromise actually means. And they think it's about losing, right? But
yeah.
compromise is not about losing, it's about, kind of understanding that the other person has just as much right to be happy about the outcome as you do. And so when you operate from that premise where we both have a right, a genuine right to be happy about the outcome, you kind of resolve from that perspective, man. I think you get a lot more accomplished.
Hey, look, man, it's it's this weird thing, man, and it's like if you grew up in the Black Christian community, it's like okay, the man is the head, right, and the wife submits. Man, and that model, in my opinion, just does not work because if you're over here being a dictator, what you're going to create is a mutiny. You know what I'm saying? And so I did my best to not try to be the head. They say, "Oh, the woman's the neck, and she could turn the head where she will." All the little parables that the pastors come up with.
Right,
Uh,
right,
but I will say is that my wife was equipped to handle certain things that I wasn't, and we settled into her handling those things, and I handled the things that I was good at. Once we found that balance of what worked best, like the medical stuff, the hospital stuff, the paperwork for the school, the attention to detail, that wasn't me. I'm more of a person who helps people realize their dreams. So, you know, if people ask me what I do, is I help people get to where they're going, whether it's my family or my friends or my clients or whatever it is.
right.
But sometimes I'm not going to document all the details along the way, and that's something that my wife is very good at. And I will say that when I look at people, I get all the credit publicly for the great things that our children do. But if people really knew her impact on uh, um, just the family dynamic, because I'm a cat from East Long Beach. I grew up in a poverty ghetto mentality, and my wife is very solidly middle class, very not never been in poverty. And so that mindset that she was able to instill into the children, her work ethic, her tenacity, um, have been very beneficial to our family.
Hmm. To me, that symbolizes that whole leadership thing, man. That conversation, it gets so blown out of proportion and just overstated, man. And I think when people realize, kind of like what it sounds like, you guys, the relationship is much more symbiotic,
Hmm.
much more dependent on, or even appreciative of what the other's strengths are,
Right.
particularly as it relates to our own weaknesses. My wife is, like you said, my wife is very detail oriented, and there's just some things that she's a master at, and she can get done in an hour, and it might take me 3-4 hours to do that same thing.
Right.
You know? So I think appreciation of what the other person brings is man, that's a starting point for a lot of good things to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And another thing is, I don't think that wives, uh, and we had this discussion right before we got on, is like, say if our relationship is 80% good, that's a straight B.
yeah,
You're gonna pass, and you want to strive for 90. But let's say if it's 80, um, and if you're 80% good, like, but it's that rock in your shoe, all your attention is gonna go to what's wrong. You might have great blood pressure, you might have money in the bank, you may have, you know, uh, just everything is going well, but you got a rock in your shoe. What are you going to pay attention to? You're going to pay attention to that rock in your shoe, and it's the little things that sometimes we focus on, and we forget the big things. And I tell you what, man, I get the best relationship advice from people who have been married and divorced at least one time. So there are most of them who are on their second marriage, and you've been married what, 30 years?
yeah, 31.
Okay, I've been married 27 years. I
Okay,
like to tell people we're on our fourth marriage. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
We're on a
break that
fourth
down.
marriage. The,
Break that
the
down.
first one was like when we first got together. You know what I'm saying? We holding hands, we skipping. You know what I'm saying? We're newlyweds. You know what I'm saying? We we looking each other deep in the eye. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That's the first one. Then the kids come along. Then we in that kid, like we PTN, we rolling kids down. You know, we got that woman got that one arm muscle where she hold the baby that I don't have. You know what I'm
yep,
saying? And
yep.
then we're doing that. Then third is when they're miniature adults, they're 16, 17. You know, you're having to put trust in them. And so now they're driving and you're not getting to sleep until they come home, even though you act like you sleep. So now you got to worry about, you got boys, the police are going to see them and harass them. You got girls, are they going to get, molested or raped along the way? That third. Now this fourth is all the kids have left. We've done our job. They've all moved on to the next phase of life. And so now we're back to phase one. It's like we dating again. But do we like each other? Because
Right.
from my generation, liking your husband was not a requirement. You
Yep.
know, my wife grew up wanting to be a wife and a mother. And she seen the potential in me. It was about security. And they will grow to love you, but do they like you? You know what I'm saying?
Woo!
And so and
That's
so
a
now
word
we
right
got to
there.
figure out, what do we like to do? Because ain't no PTA meet. Okay, you run the kid to ballet. I'll run this one over to this one. We'll meet over here. I'll cook dinner. That's all gone. Now it's just me and her, and everybody's gone. Now it's been 30 years or 25 years at that point. What do you like to do? Well, really at this point for me, is I wanted to be alone more, because I met my wife when I was 22 years old. I've been a father since I was 19. I've had somebody in my space the whole time. So I'm trying to create experiences for me. My wife wants to create together experiences, right? And some of those things, fortunately, she loves football, pro football. I like college football better than like pro football, but we have something that we have in common. We both
Yeah.
kind of like bowling. So now we out here trying to play tennis. We have it picnics in the park. We're trying to find our lanes. of what we like together. And I tell you what, the most rewarding thing of being an empty nester has been how we interact with our adult children and how much juice and love they see of us doing us, not figuring out what they, not following them around. Now they get to
Right.
see us spending time together. And they love that. You know what I'm saying? So that's number four. And this the number one group of people getting divorced, the people over 50. It's called silver divorce, a gray divorce. People think we out the woods. People think we got to figure it out. Well, my in-laws got divorced at year 45. Okay.
Mm.
And so you're more, to me, you're more susceptible to divorce because there's no one else who needs you. Everybody's good. You can stand on your own. You can do this. And so me and Gabe had this conversation all the time. We have this conversation all the time.
Yeah.
I'd rather be wanted than needed
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that.
because I want to be here.
Yep. Yep. You know, I keep hitting you with these quotes, but I remember hearing Les Brown say, life is like a fight for territory. And in the moment you stop fighting for what you want,
Mhm.
what you don't want automatically takes over.
Amen.
And I think your marriage is the same way, man. I think it's a consistent effort to make progress, or at least to not go backwards, right? And so
Yeah.
what a lot of times what happens in those years where the children are the priority, we lose ourselves in the children, and we stop forgetting how important we are in the context of each other. You know, where's the date nights? And even if the date night is us sitting on the bed and playing gin rummy, you know what I mean? Just,
Yeah. Yeah.
playing cards, something that we can connect with and bond around, and kind of keep the smiles going, keep the laughter going. So to that point, when you get to that stage where like you said, empty nesting, and you're trying to relearn each other, and like me and my wife actually grew closer. Our
Yes.
marriage is better now than it was on the day in our honeymoon phase, right? And so I appreciate what you're saying about that whole relearning each other. Talk to me a little bit about putting yourself first, like as a man. Like you talk about putting myself first, and particularly as a lifelong servant. Dig into that a little bit for me.
Man, that's hard. But before we move on from the empty nest, I watched a movie called Minimalist, and I would let me see, attention advised. You focus on what you want for those moments. Yeah, Minimalist on Netflix changed my life
Yes.
forever. And basically, it was
Yeah, yeah,
saying how we just we have too much stuff, and we work these jobs where we might be making good money, but we need more because we've got too much stuff. And we always want the new season of this, or the 2022 car that we had, the 2020. And it made such a difference in my life that in 2018, once the last kid was gone for like a year, we decided to we had a loft downtown. It was beautiful, wood floors, 20-foot ceilings. But we'd been there 10 years. But when we went to go pack, there was stuff that was 15 years old. So basically, my 1,800 square foot loft was a storage facility with internet and TV. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so I had 2,500 books, albums, CDs, video games. I had PS3 games. We ain't had no PS3. So we sold or got rid of 90% of everything we own. We put the rest in storage, heirloom stuff. Um, and we went
wow,
and lived on the road for 6 months. We lived in a hotel. And when I told my buddy we moved into a hotel, I was like, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Like we fell off. But no, we stayed in the Marriott. Uh,
yeah,
and or we stayed with family members.
yeah,
We stayed with family members. And if I traveled or my wife traveled, we just go stay with our daughter, you know. And a funny thing happened, man. A funny thing happened. Um, First of all, we got closer because we were always in an unfamiliar place. So we learned the Metroplex, Dallas, better than anyone, I think, because we were always in a different area of town. Hey, we're going to meet up here. We're going to meet there. And what we did was we parked the car downtown. I had a truck. We put like one suitcase each, and then we carried a suitcase. And 6 months of not having an internet bill or electricity bill and having free food, and if every week felt like a vacation with my
yeah,
wife. And we tried different restaurants that we normally wouldn't have tried. And then we did it for 6 months. Then our son came home for the summer, and he was just too big of a dude for us to be three deep in a hotel. So we got an apartment, and then he didn't even stay with us, and I couldn't get her back out. So that was the thing. But back to your question about putting myself first, I struggle with
Yeah.
that to this day. Because we were taught to esteem others higher than yourself, but it wasn't to esteem ourselves low. You know what I'm saying? And as a husband and a provider, a man of my age, we've been conditioned to take care of people and to, if you eke out a little bit of happiness, that's a bonus. We were not taught ever to, have a little bit of excitement, enjoyment for ourselves. So the people who have been encouraging me to put myself first, strangely enough, have been my grown daughters, because maybe they see something, but like, Dad, go ahead and do it. And so,
Yeah.
I recently went to the Super Bowl, and my wife's a football fan, and I felt a certain type of guilt that she couldn't go. You know what I'm saying? But I had hold on a second. I think I got it with me. I ain't put it up yet. I had a ticket. I had an all access ticket, man, and it
Nice.
said
Nice.
game day. Now the one that I had the week before didn't say game day. This had all the areas and the barcodes that I can go to. So something I'll keep forever. My Troy Nalls game day Super Bowl. And my favorite team was there. My brother's favorite team got beat by my favorite team.
Oh, that's nice.
He was a 49ers fan. And I think he
Yeah.
just liked the 49ers because I like the Rams,
Nice
because
little
he's from
sibling
Long Beach.
rivalry.
It's
Yeah.
just sibling rivalry. He from Long Beach. He don't believe in wearing red, but his team is red. I don't get it. We wear blue in Long Beach. I don't know, just a
Yeah.
hater, just a sibling hate. Uh,
Yeah.
at the home stadium that I'd never been to. And not only was I there, but I was on the field. I was
Mm.
watching the game from the field. And I felt guilty the whole time until I got to the game. Like leading up, like the 3 days
Yeah.
or 4 days, just like, because I was like, man, should I, who should have this much fun? You know what I'm saying? Without being able to serve your family. So it's something I'm learning. I'm still struggling with it, man.
It's like any muscle, I guess. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
It's a fight though, man. It's like when that
Yeah.
first time, like when you haven't been to the gym since you were 19, because I tell my kids, hey man, put yourself first.
Yeah.
Don't be out here having no kids, man, because as soon as hey, you like playing them drums at all hours of the night. When you have a baby, guess what? You got to be home in a reasonable hour so you can wake up and do whatever with your kid. Don't
Man,
do it.
just in terms of exercises and good mental health, it's really paramount that you put yourself first, because you're supposed to fill your own cup first and then give from your overflow, right?
Absolutely.
And so if you're taking care of yourself and making sure that you're happy, then you show up as the best version of yourself so that you can contribute to others. And
Yeah.
being full. And I think that's healthier than showing up feeling depleted, feeling overused, overworked, underappreciated, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think?
Yeah, I watch my mom do that. I watch my mom put everybody first, and then as her health declines, things she may or may or not wanted to do herself, she doesn't have the physical ability to do it. And so that's one example I like to look at. And not only my mom, probably especially those who've been raised by a single mother, most mothers, and this is what I told my wife when the kids were starting to transition out. And I'm gonna use the exact words I said, because you guys know me be a little wild. I seem a little more stoic now. But I said, look, your identity is too wrapped up in us. When
Mm.
I get up to speak, if I have my name is Troy Nalls and I do all these things, yeah, and I'm married, I got 3 kids. And my wife's bio, she says, first, I'm the wife of Troy Nalls and the mother of these 3 wonderful people, Lishay, Jasmine, and James. And then, by the way, I do this. I said, listen, these kids are transitioning out and, they don't want to be around us. And your husband is crazy. So you don't know what I'm going to do. You need your own identity. You need to figure
Right.
out who you are outside of us, because us ain't guaranteed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not saying that I was going anywhere or anything like that. And that's when she went and became a top producing real estate agent. And let me shout out my wife. I'm super proud of her. Everything is 80% right. So I just took my shoes off to get the rock out my shoe so I
Right.
could celebrate who this woman is. Her name is Tamara. And she was a stay-at-home mother for 20 years. In that time, she ran a nonprofit for 10. She homeschooled for 7. Okay. And she decided she wanted to go into real estate. She was not a people person. She didn't like small talk. She was an introvert. Um, Everything that you didn't need to be a successful real estate agent.
Wow.
And she went and learned all that. And she tells a story one time where someone told her, if you want to be successful, you're going to knock on 20 doors a day. And I wouldn't go knocking on. I figured I'd get shot if I knocked on 20 doors a day in a nice neighborhood just because of my stature.
Right.
She said the first day she went out, she sat in the car for 30 minutes and couldn't get out. White knuckled, everything. She came back the second day, 30 minutes. She couldn't get out the car. She finally got out. She did it. She enjoyed it. The next day she went back, still sweating. And she ended up doing it where she started knocking on 20 doors a day. And the way she figured it out was she just put her walking clothes on, carry flyers with her, and just drop them off on doors. And she ended up selling like 2 or 3 houses like that. And I was just so proud that she did all that. And then last month, because she'd been studying theology, she got a doctorate in theology, right? And so a lot of times you hear women say you can't have it all, but you can have it all, just maybe not at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of career-minded women don't develop a family. You know what I'm saying? A lot of women who've had 2 or 3 kids and they come out the workforce for 10 or 15 years and they have that 15-year gap in their resume, they get judged differently than men who have kids, because we're not expected to take any time off. And so I'm just really proud of not only her, what she's done is that our daughters could look at her, because quite frankly, they didn't want to be mama. They didn't want to have to depend on daddy for money, because they realized that a lot of younger men ain't built like their dad. You know what I'm saying? And they wanted their own bag. They didn't want to have to ask dad for no money. Well, let me see what your daddy say. Well, now mama got the bag. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And so it's letting her daughter and her son, but to a lesser degree, letting her daughters know that they can have it all. They don't have to choose one over the other. They can have a family and a career.
That's
So
right.
shout out to Tamara Nalls.
I like that, man. Yeah, shout out to Tamara Nalls, man. Congratulations to both of y'all for that. Hey, I know you got to get out of here, but before you do, I wanted to touch on this one last point. You talked about defining and redefining manhood. If you could just kind of touch on that a little bit before I let you go, man, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, and I ain't running. What is it? And early on, it was about who had the biggest name as a Lions. We button heads, so it was more about physicality, right? But for me, man, it was about maturing and understanding conflict resolution, leadership, and when I say leadership, it's like leading a family, leading people, and building people. And so for me, man, manhood is about protection, it's about security, and it's about building people. Not only your family, but the first person you gotta who has to grow up is yourself, right? And I believe a person really has to leave their parents. So as a man, you have to have this moment where you break away from your parents and you go on this wilderness journey. For men who are older than me, it was war. For men my age, it was either college or military, right? Until you break away. The reason we sent our son so far away for college, 1,300 miles, so he can. We have the same name, but he had to develop his own identity. He had to. We had to trust the training that we put in and send him somewhere so he can make the choices and become the man in his personal life. Because most people think he's like me. He is nothing like me. I didn't try to raise another man. I think the mistake that a lot of men make is they try to raise themselves, or they try to take things that they were short in, whether they wanted to be a football star, or like I wanted to be a drummer. So when he showed a propensity to be a drummer, my parents said it was too loud. I was like, man, make as much noise as you want to. But he still had to follow his own path, and he had to want it for himself more than I wanted. So right now, as I redefine the man I am now, it's about what I call the OG status, right? So I was Troy Nalls up until I was 50. When I turned 50, I said I would not answer to anything other than OG. And when I was 25, I needed me, right? But there were no 50-year-old men around. And I don't think maybe it was the Vietnam War, maybe it was the war on drugs, maybe it was mass incarceration. But most of the men who were around were giving horrible advice. Run through as many women as you can. You know what I'm saying? You'll never be out of debt. Just spend just this horrible information. I tried that business stuff, it don't work. And so I made it my life's purpose from this point to give the best advice I know, the best answer I know, even if the answer is I don't know. Me and
Right.
Gabe were talking one time. I don't know if he was here because every time we come to Dallas, we try to meet for breakfast. Um, and he was asking me some questions about some issues he was having with his son, and my answer was I don't know because it's a different time. But I also said, hey man, you love fishing, take Kai fishing with you. Let him spend that personal one-on-one time with you, and see if he likes it because we really want the approval of our parents. We want the approval of our dad. A lot of people think, oh, we want the approval of our mom. We really want the approval of our dad. And since
That's
we
right.
live in a lot of fatherlessness, men are looking for leaders and looking for leadership. And sometimes they find it in pastors, football coaches, teachers, and things that I just want to be the kind of person that if you cross my path as a young man, and I give you just a little bit of advice along the way, and it helps you, that's the person I want to be. And
Yeah.
sometimes it involves tearing you down. And I think that's where most people, like when I get in these groups and I have these debates, sometimes I'll go hard on somebody because there's no one telling the hard truth. And you do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
We have it's like yours is a more diplomatic. Sometimes mine's is like I'm gonna hit you in the middle of your chest because ain't no women around.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna come at you, especially like when I'm in a father's group and some of these cats be talking this mess. I'm be like, man, rather than calling you less than a man, I'm gonna say, hey man, that's not a man move right there.
Yeah.
And so men holding other men accountable, and I like that joke I say is I have a attraction to men. I'm attracted to men. I love me some men. I love being around men. I really do.
Yeah.
Not in any other way than it sounds gay, um, but it's not.
No,
It's
I know exactly
I
what you mean.
I love talking to Eric Roberson's father. I love talking to my old man. I love talking to my Uncle Thomas. We go live every once a week or so.
Yeah.
Gabe told me he loved me, man. Then he went in the group. He called me one day, say, "Hey Troy, OG, I love you." And I was like, "All right, cool, man, cool. All right, I'll holler at you. Thanks." And then he went in the group and said, "I told OG I loved him," and he didn't say it back,
Right.
right? And I love that. I love that challenge. So Gabe, I love you. Not I
Yeah.
love you, dog. I love you, man. I can't wait for you to move back to Dallas. You know what I'm saying? Because it's felt like I got another brother. And so I think being a man is about finding a tribe and being held accountable by other men. Because right now we're living on an island.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I ain't going nowhere. You get shit. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. It's funny you say that because so much of our even our generation, but especially our fathers and our grandfathers' generation, manhood
Yeah.
was almost defined by how much of your emotion or how much of your feelings you could suppress, how much you could hold
Press.
it in. And the
What?
irony in that is that um, if you go back to like indigenous cultural ways, the height of manhood is being in tune with all of your feelings, not necessarily the overly emotional or anything like that, but being aware of and in tune with, and even more important, mastery of the various emotions rather than suppressing those emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, man. I agree 100%. My father's 80 years old, man. And I don't think I heard him tell me he loved me until I was like in my mid 30s.
Wow.
That's all I ever wanted to hear. And I remember probably about 6 or 7 years ago, right here in this house, because my parents have been in this house about 30 something years. Uh, I was taking a selfie with my son and my dad, and I was on the outside. And my dad reached around all three of us and held me because I was on the edge of the bed. And man, I bust out in tears. You
Wow.
know what I'm saying? And I remember one time I was took him to LA, hung out with him so he could see his sister before she passed. Took him to Vegas, had a good time. Then I was putting him on the train to go home, and he hugged me and said, "I love you, son." And his beard touched my face. It felt weird because he had never done that. And I held on extra long because I didn't want him to see me crying. I felt like I was a 6-year-old boy, man.
Wow.
Um, at the time, he was probably 71, 72 years old. And so, the relationship I have with my son, people love it, but it was the relationship I created that I wanted with my dad. but I also created the relationship I wanted. This is what I tell a lot of men who have broken relationships with their father. Create the relationship you want with your father. He came from a generation that didn't allow him to show emotion. My dad come up in General South. You know what I'm saying? You don't, you can't have feelings, man. You're trying to keep that thing off your neck. You know,
Yep.
and go back and create that relationship with your old man if you still have him, even if he ain't around and you know where he at, and you're like, man, I don't want nothing to do with him because I'm my own man. I understand that, but go back and create that relationship that you wanted with him, not to make him feel bad, but to make you feel good, and then you can take that to your sons and your daughters
Yep. Yep. I
and
agree.
grandkids.
I agree. There was a time,
Mhm.
my father was murdered when I was 11, right before my 12th birthday.
Wow, man, how
Man,
did you recover from that?
man, it took a while. My mother, she put me in counseling at the school. We moved right after, so we were living in the projects in Chicago,
Yeah.
and 1984, man, and it was just starting to turn bad. That's the year that crack hit. Um, but up until that point, we left our front door open, unlocked. I would walk the whole neighborhood with no problem. We had no concerns like what the concerns that exist today, and it just took a turn for the worse, man. My pops got murdered. He was, he liked being in the street, and he
Yeah.
got murdered. And I think my mother just saw the writing on the wall, and she was like, "Yo, we got to get out of here." And so we moved to the suburbs, but it was in my blood, So I stayed in trouble anyway.
Yeah.
And I went through that phase. This is when the rappers, you would hear them almost like blasphemy, man, talking about how my daddy wasn't, this, or just they would talk down on it. And I kind of I almost got pulled into that a little bit because my father, like I said, he was a street dude, so
Yeah.
he wasn't there in the ways that I wanted him to be, and more importantly, that I needed him to be. And so, ironically, that's what fueled me getting married so early, right? So my wife got pregnant. She was my girlfriend, of course, but she got pregnant when I was 16.
Hmm.
And I remember that pain of not having my father there. So I said, ain't no way my child is growing up without me being there. Like
Right.
Jay-Z. My mama couldn't
Yeah.
reach me, and my teachers couldn't, what do you say? My teachers couldn't reach me, and my mama
Reach
couldn't
me.
beat me
Couldn't beat
enough
me.
to match the pain of my pops not seeing me, right? And
Yeah.
that was me in a nutshell. So I knew that I was going. So my question to you is, on the heels of that point, I got married real young. Gabe got married real young. And there's some benefit to that. There's some value to that. But then there's this idea too that, a man should be stable, financially stable. He should get that bag or whatever, be settled and all that before he decides to bring a woman into his life, right? So how do you reconcile those two things where the people who seem to have something more genuine, oftentimes they find it at a younger stage, the men find it at a younger stage of their lives, in comparison to having that bag. And then, of course, now we're questioning, is she there for genuine reasons, because she genuinely likes me, rather than the fact that I pulled up on her in a Benz and, I got the bag now. How do you
Yeah.
reconcile that?
Well, a couple things. One thing I want to say before we go away from 1984 is I don't think people realize who weren't there how there was always drugs. There was Sherm, there was PCP, there was angel dust, but nothing changed the community like crack.
Right.
And how that changed the fabric of our families. With your father being murdered, we left Texas, we left California for Texas because of that. The family members that we lost, the people who have been in jail since, 30 years, mass incarceration. It was really rough on our community, and I think we're just not recovering. Okay, but that question that you ask, is no real good answer. But I'll say this: the sufficient condition or the social norms were for a man of our age, or for my age when I met my wife, 21, got married at 26. To get to the next level was you needed a wife. You weren't going to go to the top of a ladder because you need to be focused, right? And I look at someone like Gabe, I look at someone like me, and I say, the women who we chose, who showed us, they seen the potential, because women are attracted to potential, right? So they basically they invested in crypto early. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
they won. Like Gabe's wife fucking won. My wife flat out won. right?
Mine too.
And yours too, right?
Yeah.
You because of what you desired. So she's seen something and she signed up and she won. Now, what has it been easy? No, right? Because
Oh,
we grew up together, and if women mature faster, my wife is 5 years older than me. Just imagine how. I remember one time we went to a club in New Orleans. I was 23 and I couldn't get in because you had to be 25. She had to talk them into let me in. And I was so pissed. And they was in there playing songs like Mr. Magic by Grover Washington. I was like, man, look at these old people. I was hot. I was 28 hot. Because she drugged me to the club. But I had grown up. Now I would love that club. I had some growing up to do. And so the thing about marrying early is no one knows me like my wife, right? And at the same time, a lot of the information she's holding on to don't exist anymore, only in her mind, right? And vice versa. And so now I look at the results. All of my married couple friends, we all have grown kids. And I think one is married and two have children. And I stood up at my 50th birthday party and said, there's a reason why our grown daughters, because most of our daughters are grown. My son was only like 4 years ago. He was 19 when I turned 50. They're career minded, educated, and unmarried. So maybe they seen something in our 20 years together and their 20 years and 25 years in the house that made them say, maybe I don't want to be married at this point. And so
mhm.
sometimes I have to look, for me, I look inside first. It's like, what did our kids witness to say, I don't, that's not what I want. Because every marriage I seen growing up was, I didn't see no Huxtable marriages. And even that, you see where that one went, right, in real life. And so we had to kind of redefine what we wanted. And I believe the younger people are redefining now. And I think if I had to do all over again, and me and my wife both agree on this, is we would have waited until we were like 30 to get married.
Mm,
Become who you are. Like, because when you start changing lanes um, inside of a lifelong relationship, the person's like, wait, you weren't doing this when we got together. Like what's this new thing you're doing,
yeah.
And and you know, so I can't really answer that question smartly because we all had success in it. But listen, I seen a stat and I'm gonna find it. 90%, 89% of all relationships they started prior to 30 end. So looking at
Mm,
you, looking at me, looking at Gabe, we're in that 10%. And
wow.
so how do you get to the 10%? Look, man, there's a lot of seasons of marriage. There's a lot of times where it's easy for it to say, you know what, forget this. And so the 30 years you have, my wife and I've been together 31 years, been married 27. I be telling people when they ask me, OG, how do I get to your level? I'm like, shoot, man, I don't know if the conditions exist.
Yeah.
And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is my wife, had a degree she was in college when I met her, but her whole life goal was to be a husband, a wife, and a mother. My buddy sent his girls to college to get their MRS degree. Marriage was valued very highly in our community in the times that we were coming up, even if they were not functional.
Right.
And now I think Big Mama told her daughters, "Hey, don't depend on no man." And then that mama told her daughters, "Hey, right now we see that they say this. I'm glad you said it. They say that most of our households are not you know, they're not being raised by their mother and father, just single parent households. I don't believe that. Okay, because I'm sitting in my mama's house. My oldest daughter was raised right here in that room right over there. My parents have raised at least two of my son, my brother's kids. My sister and her husband live in. We have a guest house in the back. My sister, her husband, their two kids live on this property. So my two nieces, who I thought were going to run in here, are here. I raised my nephew. Right? Black families are more communal. What I'm telling you is not foreign to you. How many of us are raised by grandma, a aunt, a cousin, a family friend? We have community, but the narrative is there's no men around. And
Right.
I just don't believe that. It might not be, and even when they're not married, black men have been proven to be more involved with their children than any other race of people. So we got to stop. celebrating this superhero. Because I never called myself a single father when I was an unmarried father. Never did. I never defined myself by a failed relationship. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? I was a father. That's
Period.
it. My marital status has nothing to do with my parental status, and everything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Because when I did it the first time, I was like, man, society don't work. Next time I do this, I'm gonna have a whole wife. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. You said something real important. I think the women back then were inspired to be wives. I mean,
Hmm.
my wife too. I mean, my wife wanted to be a wife. She wanted to be the best wife she could be. She wanted to be the best mother she could be, and she wanted to be a nurse. Those were the three
Yeah,
things on her agenda. And I think that's something very different than what a lot of women are inspired by now. They want to get married. And there's a difference between wanting to get married and wanting to be a wife. You know what I mean?
big difference.
Yeah, it is, especially when, and now we have so many different things going on within the culture, so many different ways of looking at marriage, so many different ideas about what marriage is and what is a man, what is a woman, what should a husband be, what should he? Now the big question is, what does she bring to the table? You
Yeah,
know, and I mean, it's just, oh
the
man,
infamous table.
yeah,
The
I don't even
infamous table.
know what is this table.
Well, look, man, you gotta think about it. If we just look at just if we just look at the just the social norms, right? Well, my mothers back then, or women back there, left their father's house and went to their husband's house. There was no stop, and
Right.
so you know, I'm not gonna say if that was good or bad. It's just what it was. And so if you met someone who's in their 70s who got an education and it was a black woman, that was kind of an anomaly, right? And so your wife, my wife, they watched those women be good wives and mothers, or wanted to be, and that was who they looked at, and so they wanted to do the same thing. And then we can go deep into how welfare breaks up families, um, but I didn't want to get that deep. But when the father was systematically removed from the family, that's when we start having a black man ain't shit movement. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many of us who fight it, but our voices are being drowned out by the media and others. And so I don't participate in that. Like, I don't know any deadbeat dads. I know they exist, but I don't know any of them.
I know one, but for the
Yeah,
overwhelming majority of the ones that I know, like you said, I mean, they're all on point, or at
right.
least trying, you
Yeah.
know.
So I look at Tupac. Let's talk about Tupac. I just seen an interview with him the other day, and it confirmed what I was thinking. He said it himself. He was 23, but in the "Dear Mama" song, he said his mom was a black queen, um,
Mm,
even though she smoked crack. Right. The
yeah.
very next sentence, he said his dad was a coward because he wasn't there. Right.
Yep.
And I wondered if Tupac had lived to be 50 and he put out "Dear Mama" Part Two, how he would have said it. And this is what I think he would have said: I missed my father. I really felt a void by not having him. Um, but maybe I understand that, you know, it's a toxic situation where you have one person addicted to crack and one person, how do you work that out? Because the kids never know the full story.
Right.
But in the interview that I seen with him and Ed Gordon, he said, "Man, I don't have my father." Like, and I would probably be able to tell you a different level of the game if I did. And there's a whole bunch of young cats out here just like me who run around here without access to their father.
Yep.
Now, I don't put nothing past Pac's parents were Panthers. Panthers were eradicated by the U.S. government. I don't put nothing past what they did, um, as it relates to the family. But boys really are out here, suffering and not even knowing why, looking for their father, right? And they're gonna love their mama because their mama is the one who's there. Um, but let me tell you who's gonna suffer, because if the mama handles that boy in a certain way, um, he gonna spend the rest of his life telling his wife or his girlfriend, "You ain't my mama."
Mm.
Trust me, that's like a common sense. You ain't my mama. Don't be talking to me like you my mama. So it must be something about the way moms are communicating with these boys that leads them to have difficulties in their future relationships.
And no doubt, the job is not meant to be done alone, right? So we can start
Absolutely.
there, you know.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
And then when the government becomes your daddy, and daddy, like it costs money for daddy to like. So let's just talk about Dallas. 2-bedroom apartments, $1,500. You mean the government gonna pay for that for the kids? Okay, daycare. I don't know how much daycare is, but they gonna pay with the 500 a week. So now we up to like 2,500. They give us $1,000 worth of food, and we have 35, $4,000. So to fall in love and get back with the baby daddy is gonna cost $4,000 a month, and $4,000 a month is $1,000 a week. 40 hours is at $25 an hour. And if you ain't got $25 an hour skills, you can't really um, get together and walk away from those benefits. And I took a class in economics, and it talked about how the system, based on how much they give you, what is it like if you're gonna go to work for $12 an hour to be prideful, you're gonna lose out on all these benefits and a free education. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not
Yep.
gonna happen.
This is the part that's often overlooked too when you hear so many people blaming the women for where we are right now, saying things like they chose welfare over the man. And I think a lot of times, a lot of men don't realize, a lot of people don't realize that I heard James Baldwin talking about this in the conversation with Nikki Giovanni. And he was saying that in many cases, the men elected to leave so that the child and the mother could eat. Because if I am,
Man,
what James Baldwin said, if I am here, nobody eats.
nobody eats. I posted a video called the Igo Pruitt Myth. There's a documentary about housing projects in St. Louis, and there was a clip where this brother made the painful decision. So here's what he said, and the guy kind of reminded me of you. He said the white people will come by, and he said, I don't know who this white man was, but I wanted to know how powerful was he to make my mama lie?
Mm.
Meaning, we ain't seen our daddy. He ain't been around. And the father and the mother got together and made the decision for the kids to get an education and move into, because there were no jobs. There were no jobs. And when I say no jobs, the racism that these people were against, they couldn't get in the union. And so getting work was hard. So all there was street hustling.
Yep.
And so if daddy was there, daddy was often in that discussion of, hey, I'm going to leave so that you guys can eat. Or they would go to another city and work. They go off to Chicago. From my family's from Alabama. They come to Chicago and work in brick masonry and all these different things. But yeah, man, it was a rough time. And look, if I had to make a decision that if we're staring down the barrel of homelessness, and we can get all these things, I just have to go into hiding. I'm going into hiding. And
Yep.
just imagine if a woman has to make that decision and they're not getting along. Okay.
Right.
They're not together anymore. It's real easy for her to say, you know what, I have to choose me and these kids. That's why I laugh when people say, when they start saying, who we gonna put first? Who we gonna put first? And I said, boy, lose your job and you're gonna find out who that woman gonna put first. She gonna put
That's
them kids over your dusty ass,
right.
and they gonna be clean. They gonna be running that welfare card, and you the one gonna be out there talking about I want my family back. You better
Yeah.
get
But I mean,
your money up.
that's maternal though. That's a maternal instinct. I think women,
Absolutely.
generally speaking, of course there are exceptions, right? But generally speaking, women have an attachment to a child that, ours is here. We know that's our child, and so of course we
Mhm.
feel it in our heart. But they literally carried that child. There's a bond there that we can't replicate, man.
Right. Right.
Especially when they like. There's something to be said about the difference in the bond when a woman has a C-section versus when she has a natural childbirth. Right? There's a bonding that takes place. There's chemical bonding that takes place when the child is born naturally. And
Yeah.
in those scenarios, when the woman is healthy minded, we can't replicate that connection, man. I mean,
Now
we can love as hard as we can, but
I tell you, look, it didn't. Not only that, when we talk about the system was written by men in the European community who, in their culture, they don't care for the kids. The women care for the kids 100%. So when they wrote these laws, they didn't have fathers in mind because they really don't parent in the way that we parent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I remember having a judge tell me, "Why would a man want custody of his daughter?" And I'm looking at him like, "What?" You know, that's when I knew that this was not culturally for me.
Yeah.
And back to the bond. Look, man, I tell people all the time, my wife and I chose each other, right? We went down to the courthouse and signed a piece of paper. We had a witness, and then we had a pastor or clergy marry us. And all of that can be undone. All of that can be undone. But those kids, when they talk about, two should become one, those kids are a perfect combination of who we are.
Yeah.
And that can never be undone. And so
Yeah.
for me, it's all about we've been entrusted with these live souls, and it's our job to help develop them. They didn't ask to be here. I remember when our daughter was mad because we homeschooled her. It's gonna sound crazy, and she was like, "I don't can't believe y'all." I said she wasn't. She's like, "I hate y'all homeschool me." I told her she wasn't smart enough to know the benefits of homeschooling. But here's why she was mad at us. When she went off to college, everybody had high school memories. That's not something we took into account. Like
Mhm.
you remember your high school prom and your high school sweetheart and the football captain. Them 3 years are very impressionable in your life. And my daughter didn't have those experiences, right? And so we didn't homeschool our son through high school. We homeschooled him up to a point because our music mentors, he was a musician, told us he had to be in a band every day. So we put him in a high school that was known for bands, and he has those memories, right? And so I said all that to say we didn't get it right, but we together tried to focus and give our children the best opportunity to leave us and go out and make their family and grow our family. And we will know, like they said, how successful we were once they have kids and how they choose to raise their kids, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. That's a sound indicator for sure.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that are pulling at people these days, man. I think it was a lot simpler when our parents were younger and raising children than it is now. I mean, we like right now we're being saturated with
Yeah.
just bombarded with all kinds of competing ideas about what's right versus what's wrong, what's standard. Even this idea of, like, just to go back to this for a second, what do you bring to the table? And there was a brother that graduated law school, and he says, now I'm the prize, right? And
Yeah.
there's this hyper focus on individuality in a time where we really need each other more than we ever have. And so, in my mind, you tell me what you think about this. In my mind, neither one of us is the prize. The prize is what happens when we get together. The
Right.
relationship is the prize, and especially if we can bring forth some healthy children and business or whatever it is, like the coming together and the fruit of our coming together is the prize in my mind. What do you think about
Yeah, I think we're at an interesting time, um, and we get to hear the red pill guys, and then we get to hear the opposite of that, the women, and it's this competition. Man, I was looking for a beautiful woman to spend the rest of my life with, right? I didn't know what the rest of my life meant though.
that? Right,
So
right.
I didn't see 54 from, and I, people ask me, I chose well. I chose well. We both won. When I think about value to the table, having two daughters, um, when someone asks them what they bring to the table, I taught them a table. Like we both got tables. Like what's the big deal table? And I got them plates and them placeholders and the spoons or knives and forks. And I think now marriage is about partnership more than it's ever been, or it should be.
Yeah,
And so you should be in a space where you're going in the same direction. Like I look at some of my wife's real estate clients, and they're doctors married to doctors, and they're lawyers married to lawyers. You're not seeing attorneys married to cafeteria workers. You, you're not seeing these people are they're marrying at a level, and I'm sure like someone like Gabe, he met his wife in college, right? That's like your highest level of attainment at that point in your life. I met my wife in the military. To her father was retired military, right? So she was the best in my mind that the area had to offer, and vice versa. You met your wife where you grew up, right? But now you can meet somebody on christianmingle.com, Instagram, Plenty of Fish, and what all these other things are. And so it's this fear of missing out. So I'm sure that there were women who were I'm sure there was better looking guys or more successful guys 30 miles away in the next town over, which was Pensacola, Florida. You know what I'm saying? Where Clifton's from. Or you go a little bit further, Mobile, Alabama, or even Atlanta, Georgia, which, you know, had a lot of successful brothers. Because one thing I realized about brothers is when we get into a group of other men, we're gonna measure ourselves against the other men, and we're gonna strive to be the best that we can be in that area. But now you're competing against cats that's in the NBA, the NFL, this selling dreams. And so now people don't know. You don't know if a person is full of a filter. And so it's got to be hard now. So when we have these table conversations, I think you start to hear a lot of men say they're the prize, partially because they're being judged based on their pockets. You know, I had potential when I met my wife. I had no money. I had a dream. You know, she used to say I used to carry a planner to the club and everything. I'm writing down appointments. You know, then I start carrying a briefcase before laptops. I had a briefcase with a ruler and a calculator. I don't know what I don't know what I was writing down. Hey man, I was trying to win, you know.
Yeah.
And she was attracted to my potential. You know what I'm saying? And my wife was in nursing school when I met her, and so I was attracted to her potential. And so I don't think people go off potential anymore. It's like you got to be fully made. And so now you faking it until you're making it. I don't know, man. It's a weird time. I do tell you what, my homies is my age is single. They tell me I do not want to be out here in these streets. And the people who I know who are like married and looking to get out, and then the single brothers trying to get in, everybody seems like they want what somebody else got.
Yep. Yep.
So I
That's
don't know,
it.
man. It's a weird time, dog. And I love what you guys do because you have to put your stake in the ground and talk about it, right? Let's talk about Kevin Samuels. It's somebody I know who you don't really roll with, right? And some of the things that Kevin Samuels say, I completely agree with, right? But and people ask me privately, so I'm gonna say this publicly. I have two beautiful daughters that I love, like I can't even explain it, and a wife that I honor and respect. And my mother's in the next room. And for someone who in our community, we are matriarchal. Our mothers and our aunts and our sisters and our daughters are the core of our community. And if the community is going to move forward, it's going to be through the women. And you can tell through the amount of judges and politicians. You know, Black woman produced the Super Bowl halftime show. Most people don't know that. And she was
You know
you
that.
know, and she, if you've seen her somewhere, you would think she was just a good looking lady. But her name is Google her, Dion Harmon. And Jesse Collins Entertainment hired her, and she produced the Super Bowl. And a lot of my work that I travel for comes through women-led agencies. We got some dope women in the Black community. Trust me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to speak in a manner that's so disrespectful to women in a public forum in that way. Now, if I have an issue and I'm with my bros and I'm like, man, because we all have common understandings of, man, you know, my wife called me. I went to the grocery store for one thing. She called me with four more things. And then she called me when I was in the parking lot on my way out. Every time she calls me right when I'm at the register. And that just burns me up. Or when she tells me to take her car, I know that joker's on E. You know, that's something I could talk a lot of crazy stuff around when I'm around other married men. But
Right.
do you think I would talk about that with young impressionable men in there, or and make that thing like all women do that, which they do, or around a mixed crowd? No. And so I think there's a way that you can educate and bring attention to things. Like we talk about equality. Ain't nobody signing up. Ain't no women signing up to go to Ukraine right now. They don't
Right.
want equality. You really don't want to fight. I ain't met no window washers on the 100th floor. They were like, hey man, we need more women to more women washing windows at the top. You know, let's stop saying we want equality, because I don't want to push an 8-pound something out of my dingaling. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be equal to you. This
Yep.
stuff you do that I have no desire to do. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's how I feel about the guys who And there's some other guys who I can't think of their name who are more respectful. Like there's a brother named Soul Immortal, and he
Yeah,
was really on his way. He was doing his thing, but then all the Kevin Samuel guys took it, it just took it off. But Soul Immortal, I think he lives here in Dallas, in Frisco,
yeah,
and he
he's
was
tough.
talking about the ways of the superior man, and like he was really talking about building up yourself as a man, and how that affects you with different women and stuff. He wasn't talking about all this sensationalism, but that's what pays the bills. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Yeah,
working for him.
yeah, and I think that's the unfortunate part. If I'm gonna put a value on it, because I don't disagree with everything that Kevin Samuel says. He says some
Yeah.
things that I think are insightful. He's not a dumb guy.
Mhm.
He's just coming from a place that we just have some ideological differences,
Yeah.
and some fundamental disagreements on how men and women are to see each other. But um, I don't disagree with everything he says. But to your
Well, I think
point,
he says it in a way that people want to say it and they can't. That's what people like about Donald Trump. The white guys who can say, "Man, forget this affirmative action, forget these black folks, grab her in the pussy." He say things that people wish they could say and not lose their job.
yeah,
He was doing all kind of crazy shit that would have sunk Barack Obama. You know what I'm
oh,
saying?
no question, no question, no question. Yeah, man. I think to your point, context matters. Context matters a
Yeah.
lot, and so there are certain conversations. So if you're doing it for the bag, you know, that's one thing. Sensationalism counts, and because at the end of the day, all you care about is the bag. But if you're really, concerned about how your message is going to be received, and equally important, who it's going to be received by, then you move a little different. And that's why, to your point, like you said, there are certain conversations that you'll have only around a certain group of men, rather than
Yeah.
just carelessly putting it out, putting these vibes out that young men may not know how to process.
Right.
You know,
Right. Because he couldn't come. If I would say this, if he came to my barbershop, um, he wouldn't talk like that. And what I mean by that is there's somebody's gonna stand up and say, "Oh, dog, ain't gonna be, now we ain't going that route." You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
he did say this. I will say this. He said this. He said women talk to men in a certain way. Men talk to men in a certain way, knowing that violence is an option, and that keeps us in check.
yep,
So, so maybe I back that up because maybe he will, because I think he will adjust his conversation for where he's at. Because, like you said, he's not dumb. But women will talk to a man all kind of crazy, put their hands on him, and then when he knock her out, and I always watch these videos when that's going on, and the woman's going all kind of crazy, like that one dude who had the 8 ball, that famous subway fight, and she was talking about his jacket, and she hit him, and he smacked her, and then that's when the other men came and other women came and started to, oh man, don't hit a girl, don't hit a girl, but all the way up until that point, nobody said nothing.
yep,
No one said nothing. They just let that woman act all kind of crazy. Somebody should have said, "Hey, sis, come on, man, this dude gonna knock you out." You know
right,
what I'm saying?
right.
Um,
And
but
even
no,
beyond, even if it's not to the point where you're gonna knock her out, like that's just inappropriate. That's wrong. That's foul.
right?
It's disrespectful. Yeah, and this is just not how we move. We don't even have
Yeah,
those kind of cultural barriers, boundaries, where we're not willing to violate each other in those types of ways. I think that's
yeah.
a problem.
Cool, man. We talked about a lot, man. I'm gonna get in here and holler at my parents. I hope we covered everything. Is there anything else we want to add before I get up on out of here? Cause I'll talk to you all night.
Yeah, I know, right, man. No, we did it, man. I think we covered everything that we needed to cover. Maybe we do it again some other time, man. I definitely appreciate your time, brother.
Let me see
Appreciate
what
you.
I want to add at the end. I will say this: there's a lot of uncertainty going on in the economy. Um, Inflation is growing at an all time high, and I think that in order for us to survive, we're going to have to rebuild and hold together the black family. And what I mean by black family, I'm not saying it could be however, whatever you define black family is. But we have to come back together, share resources, and weather this storm and grow. Because listen, there are those among us who are doing extremely well right now, and we're doing well. I can't. As a family, we're doing well, but as a community, we're not doing well.
Right.
And I'm more um, worried about the community as a whole than I am just just me and my family, because we're doing great. Um, and partially because we're a family, and we're gonna have to find a way to get off get off this battle that we're having, and put look, this is what I'm trying to say. You know, where we are as a couple, my wife and this is one thing I try to remember every time we have a disagreement. Well, I'll be mad about this in 5 years,
Right.
and I'm trying to move that to 50. Would I be mad about this in 50 years? Um, because we don't want to we want to get off the emotional part and get back to the facts, and we have to figure out how to work together. Otherwise, we're going to go down with the ship.
Yep. Yes, sir. Man, that's a perfect ending, man. I appreciate that, man. Let them know if there's any place, if you want somebody to be able to contact you, tell them where they can find you, how they can follow you, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny. I don't really have like any marketing, or because I don't sell anything at this point. I'm OG Troy Nalls on Instagram. But I find people through people like you. So I seen there's already been one brother who sent me a Facebook request, and the only common friend we have is you. And so, you know, wherever you are on Facebook right now or YouTube, um, I only really like to mess with people who I meet through good brothers. Like, 'cause I don't want no new friends. And I told Gabe that I have a 10-year rule that if you ain't known me 10 years, you don't know me, right? But the exception are people like yourself or people like Gabe, where we're in this other group together, where we can establish these relationships that I feel can be like lifelong, right? And
Yeah.
so I like to meet people through people like you, because if they messing with you strong, I know that you've already vetted them, and I mess with you strong, and so I mess with the people that you mess with until they prove me otherwise. So that's how I'm gonna be found. So find me through Vaughn, Troy Nalls, OG Troy Nalls on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, my man. Well, with that, I bid you adieu, man. I appreciate you again, like I said, man, and thanks for coming here and
We're
sharing a
gonna do
bit.
this again. I'll pull you on my platform, and we'll just do this thing again.
We can do it, man. You let me know when. We run it.
All right, man.
All right, bro. Be easy.
Cool.
Peace. Man, family, that was words of wisdom from OG Troy Nalls, man. I appreciate y'all. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. And for that, I'm eternally thankful. Love y'all, family. Peace. Where my I gotta get y'all my smoke before I leave out of here. Where's it at? Let me put my I can't even find it. I want to get y'all my outro. There we go. Peace.